It's here. It's finally here. I've hit the big 5-0. Well, I haven't, not yet. Don't let the hairlessness fool you. I'm only 37. Hi, I'm indie author and vlogger Garrett K. Jones, and welcome to the 50th episode of the Vlog of the Five Kingdoms. Hey, happy Saturday and welcome to the vlog. Today is extra special because it's not only the 50th episode, it's also a unique segment of author awareness. Now, before I get into the rest of the video, be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon for notifications on new videos. You can select all videos or you can set your preferences for whatever you'd like. All right, so let's get into author awareness. So as promised, I have something super special planned for vlog number 50. Normally, I would only interview one author for this segment. Today, I'm interviewing two. That's right, two interviews at the same time. So let me introduce Karma Marie and John Harrison. Both are fantastic fantasy authors from the Modesto area. So let me tell you how I met them. This will only take about 9 seasons and 208 episodes. What? What was that? Come again? Wait, I can't do that? Why? Oh, that's the exact same plot from How I Met Your Mother, isn't it? Okay, well, unlike a certain Ted Mosby architect, I'll keep this to just under a minute. I met John and Karma at the Modesto Classic Con 2 years ago. John and I spent the weekend sharing table space at the con, and the three of us got to sit in on an author's panel during the convention, which was really a neat experience for me. So here we go.
My name's Karma Marie. This is my book, Amuse. This is my first book. This is my baby. I also am a karaoke host and DJ, and I like to sing and dance. And this book is based on the environment along the San Joaquin Delta here in Northern California. I like to write the environment I'm in, but it also includes an alternate dimension where all the mythologies coexist, so it is considered a fantasy book. And it only came about thanks to this guy here. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the print version available for people to actually hold and touch and flip through pages and enjoy.
It only came about because of you.
In print. Yeah.
And who are you?
Hi, I'm John Harrison. I write the Shadow Saga. First book is Shadow Dance. Second book is Shadow Play. Don't have that here with me right now. And third book is Shadow Flight. Again, don't have that here right now. I'm a fantasy author. I like to go to Karma's shows, her karaoke shows, and
he's an excellent singer.
Also run a stream on Sundays at called Recipe for Disaster. You can check that out on HOH Presents, which is twitch.tv/HOH Presents, every Sunday night. But yeah, lots of fun.
I really can't even remember when I was first inspired because the story sat with me for so many years. However, growing up all through school, I didn't really fit in, moved around a lot, really awkward, so I would always escape to books. So my books come about because it's a world I'm creating for myself, and thankfully some people have enjoyed it. But that's pretty much how it came about, was just wanting to create a world a story that I wanted to read myself. As far as putting it out for other people to read, it was a matter of which I believe a lot of self-published authors do now that there is the ability to self-publish instead of going through a publishing house. I did query a publishing house in the past and once and got rejected and just didn't go any further with it. But once self-publishing was available, it was more of a means of getting approval and confirmation that I should continue writing by putting it out to the public versus, just wanting to sidestep traditional publishing.
So what was one of the, whenever you're saying you got it out to the public, right? What was one of the first ways you did that? Did you post it online and have your friends read it? Did you just send it out to family? Did you just share it with friends?
I shared the story with friends first, and then I published it through Amazon, I believe, Kindle, and put it out there for people to see. Errors and all. It was pretty bad. It had to be cleaned up a lot, the grammatical errors and the mechanics and all that. So it wasn't pretty, but again, I was just seeking validation, not really looking any further than that. I was like, if people like it, then I'll continue and I'll fix it up and put it in print. But I was surprised. I really was.
So we met on a dating site. Okay,
we did.
Cupid. And we actually met up at a coffee shop, and it was kind of funny because we both went to the coffee shop. Neither of us knew that each other wrote books or had that in common. And we're sitting there at Starbucks, and we just start talking. And next thing you know, we're talking about books and we're chatting back and forth about this. And people just randomly would come up, and there was like this guy that's like, "Yeah, I'm doing a layout for a book, and I would like to talk to you guys about that." And so it was just really interesting. Everyone sort of just came up to us and just started chatting back and forth about it. And that's when part of the conversation, she asked if my books had been published, and I mentioned that I did. I went through a different route than Karma did. She went straight to Kindle, CreateSpace, and CreateSpace for the paperback now, but I went through Smashwords.com, which
I'm with now.
Which she's with now, and they just do ebooks, and they just push that out to everybody, whether the vendors want them or not. They just push the ebooks out to them. And so we went back and forth, and we chatted, and I mentioned that I had my books in print, and she had asked about that, and so that was like one of the common themes throughout. She asked me to read her book, and I did, and it was amazing. And I asked her to read mine, and she is still getting through it because it's daunting,
but amazing. It's an incredible story. It's just very complex with a lot of characters. So I'm taking my time with it because normally I'll just speed read things, and I want to give it its due diligence and the care and attention it deserves. One of the hurdles was probably overcoming my fear, because it is very scary to put something out there for people to evaluate and then receive that feedback, knowing it can go either way. I've been fortunate that either people just like me too much to tell me the truth, that I've received positive reviews. I think the only thing that I've heard that wasn't positive was some grammatical errors. Other than that, it's been pretty positive, which is great. But yeah, just putting it out there it's terrifying. But once the story started to gel and I was able to sit down and write, that's the real fight when you have a 9-to-5-ish job and you're trying to, and other
squeeze time in
responsibilities, squeezing in time to write. And usually when I get inspired, it's when I'm driving and I can't really pull over.
For me, it's in the shower or in the store. Like I'll be walking down an aisle just thinking, oh, there's the ketchup, and then remind myself when I'm sitting down at the computer writing, it'll be like, oh crap, where did I write that thing down at? And I spend more time searching for the little scraps than I would if I were to just sit there and revise it mentally. So
I have notes on my phone.
So the name sort of came from the story. There's a couple parts in the book where I actually mention shadows dancing on, like, in an alleyway or in a room, and that just seemed to be the title. I know it sounds weird, but that's where the title came from. Same thing with Shadow Play and Shadow Flight. It's just bits of the book. The shadow word itself, that being part of it, was because it's the Shadow Saga, and I'm a nerd, so I didn't think that I'd ever be an author. consciously. And I have to say that because when I finished the first book, before I ever thought about publishing it, I went to Kinko's, which is now FedEx office, and I paid them to make little books for me, and I paid them to make 4 of them, and I gave them to friends and family to read. It's like, hey, look what I did! Isn't this great? You know, I won my bet that I'm never getting the food for. And my dad read it, which first off floored me. My dad's the kind of guy that would go to the library once a month, or sorry, beginning of the month, pick up a book, take it home, read maybe a page, and then go take it back and get another book and read maybe a page. He never really finished any book. So after he had it for a month, he called me and was like, hey, I need you to come to Mountain Home, which is where I grew up. And so I went to my dad's place, and both him and my mom had read it, and my mom had given me my first critical feedback that anyone gave me, and that was, your book has elves, and I don't really care for elves. And that was the critical feedback. And my dad had caught where I had misplaced a name. Like I used one person's name instead of someone else's in a scene. And that floored me because first off, he read the book. He read the book. And then he was like, oh yeah, and I think you meant this guy instead of that guy on page 240. And I'm like, holy crap. And, you know, while I was letting all that sink in, I was sort of sitting on the living room floor playing with the dogs. My dad's like, I'll be right back. I got to go do something. And he went downstairs into the garage and grabbed a box out of the garage that I didn't know he had. And he dumped it over my head. And it was a bunch of short stories and a bunch of stories that I wrote when I was in elementary school through high school. And he kept a hold of those because according to him, he knew I'd be an author. I had no idea, no aspirations, no thought. I didn't even remember that I wrote those stories. And so subconsciously, yeah, I think I knew I was going to be a writer, that I wanted to go down that path. But consciously, no, I had no clue.
For me, growing up, I would say, if someone asked me, you know, so do you think you'll be a writer when you're older, I would probably have put that up there with, sure, you know, when I'm a astronaut president / Dr. Ballerina. It didn't seem feasible, especially, you know, when you're bullied and, you know, you don't really attribute a lot of worth to yourself. Like I said, the writing started off for me. These were stories. I actually had a vampire story that I had written just after, probably before my son was born. I wrote it by hand in a notebook, and my boyfriend, his dad at the time, knocked over his drink, soaked it, destroyed most of it, but I did have that dream, but it was a secret dream. It's like I kept it like to myself, and I didn't really share it with anyone because it wasn't something feasible. And then once I had children, I started off writing children's books for my kids, and I illustrated them, and they were the stars of the books, and I would read them to their friends at school, you know, for various reading days. I was the only parent who was not allowed to pick a book off the shelf for Dr. Seuss Day. I had to read one of their stories, and I was told one year that they'd already heard that story, you got to write a new one. So I guess my kids were fans. So that's how that came about. It was one of those, it was, I'd say it'd be like, you know, telling someone, yeah, I'm going to win the lottery someday. Be like, yeah, sure, okay.
So writing it is different than when I went to publish it. And the second book wound up being even more challenging than the first. The first, I was single-ish. I mean, I got married at part of it and then wound up getting divorced, but that's beside the point. So I had a lot of time that I could devote not to the relationship, but to writing. And the reason we got divorced was not because of relationship problems. It was a whole different ball of wax. The first book I wrote when I was single, so I had more time to devote to writing it. The second book, it was more challenging. But the reason I published the first book wasn't because I wanted to publish a book. I mean, I wrote it, I finished it in 2008, and it sat on my shelf or in my computer until 2012. So, you know, a good 4 years. And the reason that I published it was because I'd moved to California and I wasn't working, and I wound up getting a really bad dead-end job, and wasn't making money. And my wife at the time was like, we need to make money. You need to publish this book. And so I did. And then it didn't, sort of like you said, it didn't make a lot of money. It sold 200 copies in the first month, which evidently is amazing. I didn't know that because I was looking at on how much money am I making, and it was on Smashwords. I think I had it priced at 99 cents a book, and I wasn't getting the whole 99 cents a book from it, so I didn't really make a lot of money on it. And so she was like, well, this is crap, I don't want to read it, and you need to do something else. And I had 3 kids at that time too, so I had a...
Wait, we were with the same person?
So I had my oldest son was born in that time frame. The twins were born, and so when I was working on book 2, it was like we went to Disneyland. She decided that she didn't like my driving, so she was driving. I was wedged behind 2 car seats in the very back of a minivan trying to write a book, driving down to LA. And it was interesting. Not a supportive writing environment, but at the same point, I'm glad that it happened because it allowed me to realize the devotion you have to put into a book. And as far as publishing it and getting it out there, the fear that no one's going to like it, that's big. My fear was different with mine. I had beta readers and alpha readers that I let read it first, and everyone was like, oh, this is good. Oh, this is great. And so when I published my first book, Shadow Dance, my fear wasn't, oh, no one's going to buy it. My fear was, oh, crap, I'm going to have to write a second book. Because they're going to like it enough, and I know that makes me sound full of myself, but I felt that they were going to enjoy the story enough that I'd have to come up with the time to write book 2. And so the first one was published, I was proved right, and that's why I had to wedge myself between 2 kids on the way to Disneyland to try to start writing the second book, was because I had received feedback from book 1. I was interviewed on a talk show, radio talk show out of Washington, D.C. Remote. They didn't fly me out there, unfortunately. And
someday.
And a lot of people were like, hey, this is, we like it. The negative feedback I've received is minimal. Sort of like what you were saying. I do have it on Amazon. I'm very proud of this one. I do have one negative piece of feedback where the guy was like, hey, I met the author. He's a really great guy, and I tried reading his book, and it wasn't for me. And I'm like, wow. To me, if that's the worst negative feedback my book can get, then I'm very happy. I'm very proud of it. Garrett is one of them, and you and C.R. Elwood, and now a new guy, Jerry Kanak from Tracy, who writes vampire books. And I make sure that I get a copy of all the books, and I try to read them, or at least the first book, and then I try to read them. And I give feedback, and I like to consider myself very straightforward with the feedback. And both you and Christine, I strive to write as good as you guys, because to me, your books are written in a way that I would love to write like, and I can't. It follows a group of young individuals, 16 to 19-year-olds, as they find their place in the dark world known as Senecus. And I say dark world because that's the role-playing game that I'm creating, is the Dark World role-playing game, so it sort of plays off of that. And they're trying to find their place in the world. That's book 1. That's what happens in book 1, is you get to meet their parents in chapter 1, as well as them in chapter 2, and moving forward, following them through their journey of discovery, and how they fit into the world where things aren't always as nice as people would like them to be. It's going to be 6 books in the series. The second book builds off of that. Obviously, it gets more in depth, goes more into what they had found in the first book, and peels some more layers off of the world, so you get to find more of the world. Ultimately, what I'm hoping to do with the book series, other than get their story out, which I want to do, is introduce the world of Senecus, because I plan on having more books set in Senecus. So the first thing I'm going to say is don't write like I do. I was told by a couple different agents that there are 3 ways to write a book. You can write a simple story in a simple way. You can write a complex story in a simple way. Or you can write a complex story in a complex way. And I don't recommend the last one because it's unnerving. There's so much detail and so much data you have to keep track of, and you sort of have to leave more than breadcrumbs for the readers to be able to follow through. when I say don't write like me, don't write snippets and then forget where you put them, because then it's literally building a puzzle. Like, okay, where did this 4 sentences go, and where is that paragraph, and where's my timeline? And I don't recommend doing that. I would recommend writing, though, for anybody, whether you want to be an author or not. Just put your ideas on paper. It's just that way you can get them out of your head and you can focus on whatever else you want to. If you want to focus on that idea again, great. But otherwise, it just frees up some of the mash that is my brain. So
it is torture, but it's delightful torture if you're. I guess we're a little sadistic, or no, masochistic. A little bit of both, because I feel like I torture some of my readers too. But yeah, the biggest thing is there's so many different writers. Dan Brown has a writing schedule from, I believe, 4 to 11 in the morning. He writes every day. James Patterson has a certain style. Stephen King does not use outlines.
Yeah.
He just writes. His characters tell him where to go. Some people swear by outlines, and my thing is, if you wait or you try to create the ideal environment, I mean, most of the people who have the ideal writing environment, they're professional writers. They can afford to just write. They don't have jobs to go to.
And they didn't start off in that ideal writing environment.
Exactly.
Most of them started off trying to squeeze in time to get these ideas out of their head. And then when they became uber successful and they could afford to quit everything else and just focus on writing, then they created their own ideal schedule.
Exactly.
So if you're in a place where you've got tons of free time and lots of money and you can afford to come up with your own writing schedule, great.
One, just write it out. If you feel like you have a story, write it out. The other advice I'll give is, it is so gratifying being able to say the end and to complete something. And I think short stories.
Yeah.
Because I started off with shorter stories. I
my
think
first one was a short story.
Start off with a short story. And then if there's enough story there to create a book out of, then build on it. If not, at least you're getting that habit of a beginning, middle, and end. You have to have a beginning, middle, and end. And the other thing that I advise is you have to write straight through. You cannot write and edit and write and edit.
Yeah.
You can't edit as you go. You have to run. This is what I call it. You just run through your story, get it all written out. Even if there's not a lot of dialogue, get all the action out, get to the end of the book, and then go back and start editing and adding details. Otherwise, you'll be stuck editing constantly and your story is not going to progress.
Social medias, Facebook, John Harrison.
Grindr.
John Harrison, or at John Harrison on Facebook, at John A. Harrison on Twitter and Instagram. HOH Presents on Facebook for the live stream role-playing game and board games for Fortune Papers Aboard, just saying. Had to do the plug. We are doing, as far as that side goes, we have a Patreon /HOH Presents for that. But yeah, lots of social media. I try to be social, but I fail.
I'm on Facebook, Karma Marie. I have the website, karmamarie.com, and I have Twitter. I'm not sure which one. But I would like to say thank you to Garrett for being interested in us.
Yeah, that was, I believe, I first met Garrett was the same time you did.
Yes.
Was at Modesto Con. I was launching my 3rd book, and Garrett was launching his 3rd book. Mm-hmm. And they had placed him in the worst table situation possible. It was... everyone else, it's like there was aisles and big areas people could walk, and then there was like this little maze of tables, and he was there, and the people behind me didn't show up, and he was like, "Can I move here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, just move your stuff. We'll figure it out later." So it was kind of fun.
That's when I met Garrett too, because we actually passed by his table and we're like, if you arrange your books a little differently, people can see them better, and so we kind of like adopted him.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, we love Garrett.
So,
A big thanks to Karma and John for participating in this month's extra special author awareness. If you're interested in getting a copy of their books, you can find Karma's book, Amuse, on Kindle, Audible, and paperback through Amazon. As for John's Shadow Saga series, you can find the first book, Shadow Dance, on Amazon via Kindle, Audible, paperback, and yes, even hardback edition. The other two books in the series, Shadow Play and Shadow Flight, can also be found on Amazon, though Shadow Flight isn't in audiobook format just quite yet. I've got my copy, and I highly recommend you get yours. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to see more videos like this, then please consider becoming a supporter on Patreon. It's crowdfunding at its most rewarding. I have 3 support tiers to choose from, ranging from $1 per month to $5 per month. Each tier provides 24 hours early access to the vlogs before they go live on YouTube, plus they come with additional perks. If the vlogs aren't enough for you, I have a podcast, Creator's Corner, that is meant to supplement the vlogs with encouraging tips and thoughts about writing. My current series is called Writing Is, and I'm focusing right now on the actual drafting phase of writing. Speaking of Creator's Corner, next week's vlog will be addressing the imposter syndrome. Dun dun dun! So don't forget to like and subscribe, and be sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter at GKJ_publishing. So until then, have a great weekend.